I will record. So please state your name, where you're from, where
My
you were
name is
born,
Charles Vogl, and right now I live in Berkeley, California.
Berkeley, California. So Charles, you and I were introduced by a good friend, Greg Voisin. And when he saw my book and what I was talking about, we had some lunch together. He says, "You got to talk to this guy, Charles." So when I read your stuff and saw some of your videos, I'm like, I probably should have a conversation. And you piqued my interest mostly around your conversation around an invitation to community and all the things you talk about. And I just wanted to get from your perspective. So where did this all start? Where did this construct come from? Where did you get started and why is community so important at this time in your life?
Okay, well, that's a lot of stuff, Larry, for one question. When you say, how did this all start? Do you mean specifically, why do I talk about invitation very
Yes.
often when I'm talking to new audiences?
Yeah.
So for context, for people who've never heard of me, my first book came out in 2016. And before then, I had spent, let's just say, 15 years unwittingly knitting people together around shared values and purpose, in more than one time zone, doing a lot of different stuff, from human rights work in sub-Saharan Africa to documenting healing after genocides as a filmmaker, for labor organizing in New York City. You get the idea. So by the time I wrote the book, I had I don't know how many thousands of hours of practice making things work, as opposed to reading about it academically solely.
Sure.
And so the book came out in 2016. And since then, I've been talking to organizations and some very famous companies about how to knit people together around shared values and purpose, typically when there's a high at stake for cooperation, because that's when people care. And I learned that when people fly me in, they typically want to talk about really big stuff, right? What do we do? What's the programming? That kind of thing. And I noticed that they couldn't even start at the beginning, which was, how do you invite people? They wanted to jump right into, okay, we're all together doing awesome stuff. How do we make that better? And what Larry, is if you really want to meet people to do something important for your family, for your work, for your community, for a spiritual organization, you don't want to meet them in a big crowded room where it's loud. And if you're going to invite people you don't yet know, even a volunteer team, right? You're a busy guy. You have a family you're taking care of. You got a career you're building. You got a book you're promoting. You don't want to go anywhere unless you have a sense that somebody cares if you show up. It doesn't need to be the most important thing in their lives whether Larry shows up. But if nobody cares, if they just stamped, if they, what do you call it? Stapled a flyer on a power pole in your neighborhood, like, that's not enough for you.
Mm.
And maybe you would love to pick up garbage, or maybe you would love to mentor middle schoolers in your neighborhood, or maybe you would love to help clean trash off a basketball court, but you're not showing up because someone put a staple on a power post.
Mhm.
So what I realized is, while people want to talk about the really big stuff, we had to start at the beginning. Who are you inviting? Are you inviting? And when you invite, how do you know that they know what they need to know? Because I know people just want to skip that. And the truth is, most people I talk to are skipping that part. I wish it
Yeah.
weren't so. My favorite story I
Yeah.
tell on stage is, I was at a brunch and a sister of a friend of mine came up to me. So she didn't know me well, but she heard that I was a community expert. And she said, "Oh, I just moved to Potrero Heights in San Francisco, and I want to meet my neighbors. So I hosted a brunch in my place, and nobody came." And she said, and she had this like smug look in her face and rolled her eyes, like, "Can you believe nobody come to a brunch in their neighborhood?" And she said, "Well, how can I build community in my neighborhood?" And I don't know her. I don't know her neighbors. I don't know if her brunch served terrible food. I don't know, right? So I asked her, "How many people did you invite?" And she looked out in the distance, and obviously her wheels were turning. And she told me that she posted it on social media. Well, there's a great example of someone who moved to a neighborhood, wants to meet people, is living around people, is willing to host, has a space, and just skipped the invitation. And then was surprised, disappointed in her results.
It's
So,
the same thing. I mean, I talk a lot about definitions. You use the word invitation. We use the same words in language that mean totally different things to
yeah,
different people.
yeah,
And we don't even understand that as a culture. We're saying something and we think somebody understands.
yeah.
And they have a totally different take. So the word that sticks in my mind when I would work with companies and they would say, we're like a family. I'm like, don't use that because some people have a really positive idea of what a family is, but some people have a horrible relationship with the word family. And the ones that don't have a positive mindset on family, they're not going to enjoy your culture. And you might lose some really great people. So it's not a family. It could be a culture that's welcoming and friendly and kind and all that stuff. But
I think it's
there's some
even
words
worse
that
than
trigger
that.
people.
I think it's worse than that. You don't tell your siblings to don't call you anymore and walk them to the door with a security guard because, according to your calculations, you're not going to make enough money on them with them next year. That's not how you treat family, right?
No.
But that's appropriate. That's how the legal department will tell you is the appropriate way to treat people you let go just because the projections are off. And my point is, yeah, I have a real problem with that too. I actually advised a very large global company that liked to use the word family a lot. And they
Mm.
were big enough that me saying don't use that was not going to make a difference. But then they went through some hard times during the pandemic. And that very, very proud culture broke radically. And I've spoken to a number of executives in that company, and they've admitted that it will never go back to 2019. It was all a straw.
Somebody pulled the carpet out.
Yeah. As I thought about it, like I would go to that company and it always looked like 1929 to me. Like I had that thought every single time. Like this is 1929. And you all pretending that like 1930 is not coming. Right. And the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Pandemic changed a lot of people's lives,
Mhm.
slowed a lot of people down. The one thing I'm learning now is how fragile we are culturally and how my daughter is 25 and my son is 24 this coming week. Their generation has been trained to lack resilience because they were never really tested. Everybody got a trophy, all this stuff, and they don't know how to deal with failure. They don't know how to deal with heartbreak. They don't know how to deal with a lot of different things because
Mhm.
we didn't prepare them well. Because we had so much challenge in our childhoods, we wanted to make it easier for the next generation. The funny thing is, I had a prospect sitting in my office. I'm like, so why do you want to grow your company so quickly? He says, I need to raise some money. I'm like, why? You have a traditional business. You can just keep growing it. He says, I don't want my daughter to struggle the same way I did. And I looked him square in the eyes and I said, when did you learn more?
Mm.
When life was easier or when you struggled? Why are you robbing your child of the struggle? That's the human experience. That's why we're here. Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
Mhm.
So,
Well, this is relevant in community. You and I had to figure out how to talk people on a school bus we didn't know. We didn't have music we could drown ourselves in. There were not videos to watch. You just were in a vehicle and we had to build those skills.
yeah,
And
I made mixtapes. I created stuff from records to tape and tape to CDs, and we watched the music progress. And now it's all just everything's streaming. Everything's so available. It's crazy, crazy. Yeah. Um, Tell me a little bit about your definition of community, where it came from, what you think is really important about it.
so I have a very simple definition of my work. And I say that a community, as far as my work goes, is a group of people who share mutual concern for one another. And I picked that because uh, when I'm speaking to people, that is the outcome we're trying to generate. And I don't care if they wear clothes like you. I don't care if they like the music you like. I don't care if you went to the same school. In fact, all those things may apply. And if you don't perceive that anybody there cares about you at your school who wears clothes like you and listens to music like you feel alone.
Mhm.
So what I distilled is the only thing that I care about we generate if we apply ourselves is we generate that mutual concern for one another. And I think it's great when the other things happen. And in order for that to happen, usually other things have to be in place. But let's just reduce it down to the thing we want. I want my neighbors around me to care if my house catches on fire, right? And I want them to know that I care if their house catches on fire.
Mhm.
And if everything else in the neighborhood is great, except I don't care and they don't care and they don't know that I care, then we have failed. So
Yeah.
that's why I use that definition. And it also just cuts a lot of the BS out. I mean, I've seen other people who I think of as wannabe community experts come up with these really complicated, maybe they think nuanced definitions that I find wholly unpractical. But maybe they look smart because they use more words than I do.
It's funny when I start playing with the AI tools that I work with. I'm like sixth grade reading level at highest. I don't want any big words. I don't want
Mhm.
smart is not smart. Like there's smart, which is I grew up in New York. So for me, it's street smart versus book smart.
Mhm.
I know so many C students that are running circles around A students because it's not about school. It's not about regurgitating information. It's about human connection. It's about understanding how this world works. It's understanding who we are as creatures. We are a creature. We're an animal just like any other animal. And I was built in this vehicle. I was put in this vehicle. I get to figure out how this vehicle operates. My brain works a certain way. My body works a certain way. I digest certain foods. I'm allergic to some, not allergic to others. I go to Italy. I can eat pasta. I come to the United States. I can't digest pasta.
Mhm.
I don't know, gluten, not gluten. It's just we are a machine. And my opportunity is to figure out why I was put in this machine, how it drives. It's like I'm 007, I'm in a fancy car, which is a human body. And I got to figure out what are all these things. So I was given some gifts. You talk about community, I just naturally love building it. I find people that have something in common and I just live off of it. So I've been saying for the last, I don't know, 10, 11 years, people ask me, who can they introduce me to? I'm saying it's not a who. I'm looking for a psychographic. I am collecting people that I call self-aware, world-changing, get shit done dolphins. So I have this idea of sharks, dolphins, and sharks that dress up as dolphins, givers, takers, and matchers in Adam Grant's book. So I want people that know who they are. I like self-awareness. I want them to want to do good in the world. Not everybody wants to, and that's fine. I just like the ones that do. And then the ones that actually do stuff. A lot of people talk about stuff that don't do it. So I'm starting to collect those people in San Diego and introduce them to each other. And like, wow, this is magic. And for me, Charles, it's my everyday life. That's what I do all day, every day. And for the people I'm introducing it to, it's 2 to 3% of their life. So it's like this world, it's really interesting watching community develop amongst people that would like to be in community, but didn't even know what that community looked like because they couldn't identify it. There's things deep in us that want to make us, that we want to connect around, that sometimes we don't even identify for ourselves. I find it fascinating. So you talk about human longings. What does that mean for you?
Right now, I think there's an eternal longing in us to be connected to others in some way. I think some people don't know how to generate that and they've been burned, and so they may be afraid of pursuing that. And I know people like to be connected in very, very different ways, and that's to be expected and totally okay. But my understanding is, broadly speaking, both science and spiritual traditions have established very firmly we belong in community. And I was talking to people who study evolutionary science, and they were sharing that the top levels of evolutionary science, there is that admission that the interpretation of survival has been made wrong. That the survival of the fittest idea works fantastic until you're in a group above n of one. And as soon as you're trying to survive in a group above an n of one, you need cooperation.
Mhm.
And now it's not a matter of whether Charles is the strongest and the fastest. The question of whether we'll survive is, can Charles work with others so that we together can face the challenges we're facing?
Mm.
And I think that the other interpretation that certainly was brought up when we were in elementary school, right, gave people this false, if I can use a fancy term, archetype, right, or role that if
Sure.
we succeed, then we needed to be better at stuff than the people around us, as opposed to learning how we're going to participate and facilitate their success along with ours. And we have a culture that's the result of that. And you have seen the results of how happy Americans are, how happy our youth are, suicide rates, drug abuse rates. It goes on forever. As I was talking to one friend, I said, if you're a really sick culture, you could predict that there would be stores at almost every corner selling drugs to make you feel better everywhere you went, which is exactly what every municipality in America looks like.
Right. Pharmacies and
Everywhere.
CVS everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need them, right? Or we think we need them because that's how sick we are.
Well, the key issue that I believe is going on is that most people live in their brain. Their identity and their ego are them, and they don't realize that they are creatures that have a brain, and that brain creates an identity and creates an ego based on the experiences they've had in their life. And none of it's true. It's their truth, but it's not true. It's just what they've learned. And they're just trying to fit in. They're trying to make other people happy. They're trying to live a life that somebody else told them they should live since they were a little kid. I'm working on a new book with a gentleman. His name is Joe Jelligrave. He's the coach of the wheelchair rugby team for the Paralympics in 28 in LA. And we were just talking about it today. And the book's going to be called The Identity Illusion. And he lost his identity twice. He broke his neck at 19 when he was in a fishing boat, 6'7", 260-pound tight end college football player. And next moment, he's in a wheelchair, quad, and found wheelchair rugby, loves it, became co-captain of the team in 2012. And in 2016, got cut from the Olympic team going to Rio because the new coach didn't like him. One of the best players on the team, but he just got in the wrong situation politically. And he lost his identity again because he had spent 4 years of his life dedicated every day to getting the best shape of his life to win the Olympics. So this whole idea of identity is definitely tied to community, is that if you don't know who you are, it's hard to find community. So if we don't, I use the analogy, you use the invitation, I use the door. So I think that we all live in this comfortable room, and this comfortable room is in our current identity, where we are, doing what we're doing. And there's an opportunity to turn the handle on the door. And the door handle, the key to the door handle is looking inside versus looking outside. And how do we look at ourselves to figure out who we are? So we can actually find the community that resonates with us just versus just any random community. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, that's a perfectly good way to interpret that. I mean, I think it's a little bit more complicated, but complicated doesn't mean it's more accessible or usable.
Yeah. Well, I think our society, in my opinion, and what's happening right now in the United States, a lot of people are looking outside themselves for answers. And most of it comes from internal inspection versus outward projection.
Yeah, well, that's what we're told to do. I mean, we live in a culture that says to find happiness, you buy, use, and or show that you own something. And like that starts within a week of showing up in the world. And it doesn't stop. So let's not be surprised that that's how we're living.
Madison Avenue and Hollywood have done a masterful job of convincing people that the more stuff you buy, the happier you'll be. And people that study happiness say that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
So mindfulness, being of service to others, gratitude, journaling, there are some basic things that bring happiness that have nothing to do with accomplishment. Talk a little bit about rituals. I know that's a big theme for you about building community.
So let's just acknowledge that for many people, just the term ritual is scary. They assume if we use the word ritual, we must be talking about people in robes carrying fire and chanting.
Just a word.
I don't even know what rituals I participated in where there was carrying fire, chanting, and robes. But I've seen that. I've actually been in conversations where people assume I must be talking about that. And all I'm talking about is experiences that we create that are meaningful. So, Larry, I know that you're a committed father. You pay attention to and show up for the health of your kids. And over the more than 2 decades you've been a dad, there have been moments where they have completed a form of maturation, be it educational or sport or
Hmm.
career, and they were no longer the student but the graduate, they're no longer the intern but the professional, whatever it was, right? And there were moments that we hoped would be meaningful for them to recognize, look, you're not who you used to be. I remember when you couldn't use the bathroom and now you use the bathroom daily, right? You're different. So one way to think about ritual is how we make experiences meaningful. And there are maybe an infinite number of ways to have ritual, but as far as community goes, one way we can easily access that is understanding we can use ritual to let people recognize that the people around them acknowledge that they are maturing and changing. And of course, there are a few that we all attend, or hopefully we attend, right? There are baptisms, there are weddings, there are funerals, graduations, fair enough. How about the moment a warfighter gets off a plane and returns to being a dad?
Mm.
How about the moment a nurse steps out of a hospital and has to start making dinner?
Yeah.
Where they have to go from being a lifesaver in a world surrounded by rules that will sue them if they get it wrong to someone who needs to think about the nutrition of their family.
Yeah. PTSD, a lot of PTSD out there.
A lot of PTSD.
Yeah.
So when we want to bring people together that we care about around shared values and purpose in relationships where we perceive, hopefully accurately, that we care about one another, one of the things we can do is create moments where we recognize other people in our lives recognize that we're maturing and changing. And but golly, we've been doing this, I think, longer than we have written records. And so there are, I call them time-tested principles and ideas that we can use to do that. And I'll just present one idea here for brevity. One of the things we can do when we bring people together, even if it's a birthday dinner, right? Birthdays hopefully get celebrated every year. Instead of saying, happy birthday, Larry, look at you, you're getting older. You're not going to get younger from here on out. And then we laugh and you blow out a candle. Like, that's not bad. And you've been to that party. But what if we stopped with 6 friends who you've known for more than 2 years? And we didn't tell jokes and we didn't have loud music. And one friend says, Larry, whatever else is true, now that you're in your 60s, you have learned way more lessons than you had in your 40s. As a father, as a professional, as a citizen, as a coach, as a guide. And this gathering is returning to a long tradition of friends taking a pause in life to notice that we are becoming the mature elders of our generation.
Yeah.
Right. Larry, before we move forward with this meal, will you share with us, for as long as you'd like, what lessons you're recognizing you've learned that you can apply for the next year to make stronger those who come next? And you're going to say what you say.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be 90 seconds or 90 minutes. I don't know. But what I've done there is I've tied today to the past and how it will make a difference for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And to prompt that, it took me something less than 2 minutes. But I need to have the intention of bringing people together and turning off the damn music, right? Stop the joking. Not because joking is bad, but let's just take a moment where Larry can have a birthday in his 60s where we're not just laughing the whole time. And then acknowledge that we are in a lineage of elders maturing who will make a difference for those who come next. And if we don't, then give up now.
Yeah.
Right. And you tell me, would that make that birthday an iota more meaningful if 6 friends stopped to share that time with you?
Yeah, much more. I think this is small, intimate groups. I think one of the things that I had to learn the hard way when I was a kid, I tell this story often. I raised myself. I was the youngest of three. My brother and sister had nothing. They wanted nothing to do with me. I was the last child. My parents were going through some real challenges when I was little. And I raised myself and I never learned how to build relationships. And I think people think when they meet somebody, they go straight into relationship. And
Hmm.
communities take time and relationships take time. And the challenge that we face as a creature for many of us is we want instant gratification. So we
Hmm.
meet somebody and we want to be their best friend. And that's not how it works. I mean, my best friends I've known for years are people I instantly connect with, but they're not my best friend. I have people that I can connect more deeply with than others, which have the potential to being really good long-term best friends. Yet you don't go straight into best friend. That's a time piece. That's a get to know piece. And there's something about that. And it's the same with communities. Communities at the beginning are very different than communities that are more mature. And communities, in my opinion, have a size. As soon as you get past, I think, 125 to 150 people, you start getting into a town. You're not a community. I mean, the communities are tight knit. They do have things
Well,
in common.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but we need to start defining terms at that point.
Yeah,
Because I could be a part. I'm a skier. I'm a very serious skier, and skiing is one of those sports where you can die. People do die, and there is a community of skiers. If I see a skier stuck in a tree well and may suffocate, I will stop. I will take off my gear. I will call for help, right? And as much as I'm demonstrating concern for their welfare and hope they would do the same, then we could define that as community of mountain sport
sure.
enthusiasts. You're not wrong in that I don't know the name of the closest 2,000 skiers to me on any given day, right? And
Hmm.
I can't, and I won't. So it just becomes important that we start defining our terms. We're talking about
Yeah.
that. I want to, for anybody who does listen to this, if anybody does, I want to get a little more granular on what I mean when we say connecting, because I notice a lot of people use that term and they're just like skipping over a bunch of stuff happens. Like magically we connect, and many times we get lucky. But I found it helpful if we get more clear. Well, what needs to happen for that connection to happen? And typically, a number of things need to happen. One is, Larry, you need to recognize from getting data that the person you're talking to shares values and purposes with you. Not all of them, but are they also a father who has kids who need them to step in and hold them up because there's a big challenge going on, right?
Mhm.
Would be good enough. And so if we have a conversation about movies and that never comes up, maybe that is true, but you don't get data that they're also in a chapter of life where they're standing up for kids who need them right now.
Yeah.
The second thing that needs to happen is you need to get data that they see who you are in the moment and accept who you are in the moment as you are.
Yeah.
So you and I both write books, and we've been to events where experts are invited, and we meet people who treat us as otherworldly because we write books and we're experts and we talk. And fair enough, I understand it, it's not bad, but they're not seeing me; they're seeing some vision of
Image.
me as removed
Yeah.
author expert, right? And they're very nice people. I'm glad to meet them, but that's not a conversation where I think they understand me with all the challenges I struggle with and the failures I'm embarrassed about, and then accepting me
Mhm.
for that. So we're not really deeply connecting, right? Even
Yeah.
though we could spend an hour at that conference. And then, in addition to those things happening, you need to perceive that time with that person is safe enough that you can share things that you're afraid that if other people knew those things, they would reject you.
Yeah.
Now, whether you bring them up or not is going to be uh, based on your temperature test of how safe they are. But if you never get a sense that you can share with Charles that thing about your family and the issues with the finances or things with the criminality or right, the adoption problems, we're never going to be that connected because you're really maybe right for good reasons withholding that part of your life from me.
Yeah.
So connection can happen, but we have to hit something that looks like these things.
Yeah.
And some people don't know that, or many people don't know that. Things, well, we spend a lot of time watching football and drinking beverages, dozens of hours. but the connection doesn't seem to happen. And it's because, well, you didn't
No.
cross these bridges.
Right. We're in proximity with each other. We weren't in
Yeah.
connection with each other. Yeah. So I need to wrap up because there's some stuff going on in my world that I need to attend to. And I think you know what I'm dealing with. So summarize community, where's it going? What's the next couple of steps? And then we'll continue this
Where's
conversation another
community
day.
going?
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that in the midst of this loneliness epidemic that's already been declared, that we educate a generation to understand what are the skills we need to learn and the actions we need to take to knit together people around us so that we have more friends, more support networks, and more access to the people around us so that we understand we can face these challenges together, which is not where we're at as a country.
Well, I'll just end with this. You know what I'm dealing with my daughter, and she moved to Denver 15 months ago, and she has built an army in 15 months that is unimaginable. I don't know where she figured that out from, but I have an army in San Diego, and she's built an army here. And a lot of people keep telling me certain things to do. I'm saying this is her home.
Mm,
This is where she is born to be. And she
mm,
has built some of the most amazing relationships in a short period of time of any human I've ever met.
mm,
And she's magic. And it's cool when you have a community developer, which is what my daughter is at 25, and what I've been my whole life. And now my son, who's 23, I'm trying to teach them. Nobody ever taught it to me. So it's taken me 60 years to figure out what I am.
mm,
And both of my children have that same gift of being able to connect people based on reasons other than what do you do for a living?
mhm,
Because the depth of community comes when you get past the what and you focus on the who and the why, which is where I've spent a lot of my time. Is it doesn't matter what you do. It does to some people, but to the people that you really want to be connected to, I think it's more important of your values and who you are and how you show up in the world and what you care about and what you care deeply about. I think those are where the connections are the deepest. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Um, I will end the recording now and hold on one second.